everyone, and welcome to episode 39 of the YarnderWoman podcast. My name is Melinda. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as YarnderWoman. We have a YarnderWoman podcast Ravelry group, and it would be lovely if you came and joined us. And all the show notes for everything I talk about can be found at www.yarnderwoman.blogspot.com.au. With the exception from last week's episode, I was very tardy and wasn't able to get the show notes up. Or I shouldn't say tardy, it was a big IT technology issue that was stopping me there. But I will make sure that all the show notes are updated for the previous episode as well as today's. Thank you very much for joining me and spending some of your time with me. I hope whatever you're doing today is fun and you're having a great time. And it's lovely you can have this little bit of a sit down to watch me and spend some time together. I have been really sick for the last couple of weeks. Some people may have seen on Instagram. I had a really, really bad flu. I'm fine now. Thank you very much for everyone's kind words on Instagram. But yeah, it's just been a bit harrowing in terms of not being able to be upright very long. I did get some knitting done, as you'll see. In fact, I had quite a bit of knitting done, which was quite good. But there was a lot of sleeping happening as well. So in the last 2.5 weeks, I've only been at work for 2 days. So it was a little bit hard to get back into the swing of things, I must say, but that's okay. And I'm very fortunate to have access to sick leave, so that's all good. And I'm very glad to be feeling a lot better now. And very glad to be able to spend some time with you. I did want to record last weekend, but I just still wasn't better yet. So I'm very glad to be here today. I'll show you today's teacup because, mug, it's not a teacup. I showed you last time when I recorded very early in the morning my first cup of the day cup that I use for my coffee. This one it's a Starbucks mug. Now, we don't have Starbucks here in Western Australia. There is Starbucks on the eastern seaboard of Australia, but we don't have it over here. I believe that's because of there is already enough coffee chains, so it's like a government regulation. So I got this in Japan. This one is from Kobe in Japan, or Kobe, if I say it properly, which was the closest big city to where I lived in Japan. I was probably about an hour and a half by car away from Kobe, but that was the big city, so it's the one where my heart lies. When I lived in Japan, I got a mug from every big city that I visited, so I've probably got about 8 or 9, which is very fun. And very nice little souvenirs to have with the tea. The tea I'm having is rose hip with hibiscus, and that's probably my favourite. Let me see if I can show you it without tipping it everywhere. No, I'm going to tip it, but I think you could see it a little bit there. It's red. So as well as it being my favourite taste, it works out well in my favourite colour. Now, because I have been away from the camera for so long, I've got a lot to show you. So I'm going to do some of my normal segments in this episode, and then I'll be recording another episode that will be released very soon after this one, where we'll have the rest. So in that way, we're not going to have broaching the subject today in this episode. Sorry. As you can see though, I am wearing quite the nice necklace, if I do say so myself. This is a lovely owl, and it is from the company Wilder, which I showed you, I believe, a couple of episodes ago, maybe even the last one. It's all a bit murky. It's my flu brain, and who knows what I did when. So they're a company in Melbourne, Victoria, which is the other side of Australia. And this is just a very, very cute owl. And it's all very 3D in terms of the pieces that have been put on, and I think it is quite a nice statement piece. Obviously, I would not want to be wearing a brooch with this, but yes, broaching the subject will be in the next episode. I will show you the shawl that I'm wearing. This is the pattern Shaylin, and it's knit in Madeline Tosh DK, I believe it is, in the Victorian Gothic colourway, which I love the colour, I love the name of the colour. It's just very lovely. I believe I made mistakes on it. Well, mistakes, I just did. Oh, that's right. So here on this pattern piece, you can see there's a garter row on each side, and down here there's not a garter row. By the time I noticed that, it was too far gone, and I don't really care. I think when I look at it, I go, yeah, it would look good with a garter row, but yeah, it's really not that big a deal. So I really love this shawl because it's the DK. It's quite nice and squishy, and it sits nicely on the shoulders. Today's weather is a little bit weird. It was forecast to be 29 degrees, which I think would be upper 70s, low 80s for Fahrenheit. But it's raining and now it's a bit chilly, but I'm in between. Am I hot? Am I cold? Oh, the dramas. Let's move on and I'll show you my finished objects, of which there are quite a few. Okay, in order of completion, finished objects. It's quite exciting to have quite a few. This is Knit Night Shawl, which you saw very close to completion in the last episode. But look at that drape. Isn't it lovely? So this is made with Gnome Acres Sparkle Gnome, which is the fingering weight base with stellina. Oh, there you go. You can see the stellina sticking up on the edge there, and it's all throughout. And the colourway is No Place Like Gnome, which had a very nice Wizard of Oz reference. And it's the Knit Night Shawl, as I said, and it's blocked out very long. I'll take you all the way along. There we are at halfway, and we're still going. I believe it's over 2 meters blocked out, and I used, I think it was 4.5mm needles, and on quite a thin or average fingering weight, so it's already was quite a loose gauge, and so when it blocked, it was lovely and floppy. This is a present for a friend, so I think it's going to suit her aesthetic very nicely. It's turned up lovely and soft, and I'm very pleased with it. So I hadn't sent it off to her because I was waiting to show you. So that is finished object number 1. And number 2 is my Narita Express shawl. So this is it here. I love it. This pattern is by Marsha Ibuki, who is Marsha Fairy Little from Fairy Little Twist and Stitch. Hi Marsha, hi Silla, co-host, and Twitch the bunny, but we don't get to see him much, unfortunately. It was a free pattern that Marsha gave to her viewers. Well, it's free for everyone, but it was mostly as a thank you to viewers for supporting their podcast. And she started or came up with the conception of the design when she was in Japan, heading to Narita, which is where the airport is. So Narita Express was the train. So it's really beautiful. You can see it's got eyelets here, 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 and here. But the space between the eyelets gets bigger each time you do it, and I really like that effect. As soon as Marsha showed it on her podcast a few episodes ago, I just knew I had to knit it. And there was a knit-along, or there still is a knit-along happening for March, so go and grab the pattern because it's a really great knit, quite easy to memorise, it's quite simple, but with that lovely detail of the different spacing. The yarn I used is Query Fibre Arts, and the colourway was Queen of Hearts. It's one I've had for a while. I already have knit a square for my Cozy Memories blanket out of this yarn. When I bought a whole lot of yarn a couple of years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, I went a bit nuts on Etsy and bought a lot of yarns solely because I wanted to use them in my Cozy Memories blanket. So lots of reds and purples and greys, which, you know, oh dear, what will I ever do with those colours? It's not like they're my favourites. Anyway, so I had, wound some off, not wrapped the whole thing in a ball, but this one was in a cake, so that's why it was ready to go. And I've been wanting for a few years to use this yarn and just never quite worked out which pattern I was going to use it for, but then it just spoke to me and I think it was a very good choice. So it's a lovely sort of light red, like if you sort of see it in comparison to the wall behind us, that's a much deeper blue red. This is much more of an orangey red, and then it's got the white and lighter colours, but also this lovely purple just splashed in. I just think it's a really lovely effect with that orangey red to have the purple. I really, really enjoyed knitting with it. I've pretty much used up the whole cake of yarn. It was quite a thicker fingering. I believe there was under 400 metres or under 400 yards, so it was a smaller length because it's a thicker weight, so it's still 100 grams. So I've used it all up now, which is very satisfying because quite often I'll end up with a lot of leftovers, which is great for swapping yarns or just giving yarns for people's Cozy Memory blankets. And actually I did have one, I think I had about 4 grams left of this one, which is going to someone for a swap. But yes, it's very satisfying to make my way through my stash because I am trying to knit through stash at the moment because, speaking of Japan, which is where this shawl was envisaged, we're hoping to take a family trip to Japan in 2017. So we're saving our pennies, and it's also a brilliant way for me to use my very, very, very extensive stash. And it's really lovely to be able to use some things that I've been wanting to knit up for a while. So that's that one. It's lovely. The project bag I was using was this one here, very Japanese themed, and that's by Sunshine Yarn Fun, and this was a lovely gift. And I was also using some sushi stitch markers, which I don't have to show you at the moment, but I was all Japan themed, so that was very good fun, and I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to wear it now that it's getting a bit cooler. Autumn is supposedly finally here. It's been great to wear a few of my shawls. This one's been a good go-to piece recently, but it will be this one's turn soon. Another thing that was very exciting about this shawl is I learned a new skill. It seems to be a good year for me for learning new knitting skills, which is semi-planned, but I didn't have a specific list. But it seems that a lot of the projects I've worked on have introduced me to new things. So the very first project I cast on for the year, in fact on New Year's Day, was the Doodler Shawl by Stephen West, and that involved an I-cord bind off. Sorry, I went blank what it was called. It did have an I-cord bind off, but that wasn't what I did when I first cast it on. An I-cord cast on, and I'd never done such a thing, and I have to admit it freaked me out a little bit when I went, woke up on New Year's Day and it was all fresh, like, yes, new project, and then I read the instructions and went, oh, new skill, no. But then I went into it with a good learning mindset and it all worked out perfectly. So the new skill I learned for this shawl was an applied border. And I must say, previous patterns I've been put off when I see there's an applied border simply because I didn't know how to do it. And it's not that I didn't want to learn how to do it, but I would, I guess, be a little bit intimidated by it. But this is a great project. I can speak from personal experience as well as Marsha suggesting it as well. If it's your first applied border, this Naruto Express is a great chance to do it. So here's the border here. So the applied border part starts there. We can see the stitches go in a different direction. And yeah, it's one of those things where when you do it, it was similar to when I learned how to do cables, which was a year or so ago. As soon as I sort of actually worked out the mechanics of it, I went, oh, yeah, what's the big deal? What am I worried about? So that was very fun and really satisfying as well, because when you do the applied border, that essentially is you're casting off the shawl, you're using up all the stitches, your border stitches are eating up all the cast on stitches you had as well. It's really satisfying because as you go along, you're casting off. When you finish your border, you finish your shawl. So yes, another good reason to try this lovely pattern. I finished 2 pairs of socks as well, but one I have to redo the toe. So I'll show you the one that's not torn, although looking at it now, I think the end of that toe is coming loose, so I best be careful. These are socks I was knitting with Felici Sorbet, which is that one. And then this is Stroll, another Knit Picks, so both Knit Picks yarns, Felici and Stroll. And I believe this colourway was Dogwood Heather. These socks, you may recall, I originally started for my niece for her birthday back in January, only to hear from her that her favourite colours had moved on to more of a cooler palette with blues and purples, so she wasn't really into pinks anymore, or orange. So these are for my sister-in-law, and I did the stripe here, but I realised I didn't have enough to do the whole foot as well. So the Fish Lips Kiss heel is in, and I love how that worked out. It's pretty much half and half exact, which is very good fun. And then the foot, and to mirror the stripes here, and also to make it a bit more interesting so that I wasn't just knitting plain yarn the entire way, I did a purl bump row every 10 rows, I think it was, which was about even here. So that's that one. The one that I have to really fix is this one. See. So I gave these to my sister-in-law, she loves them, and she was just wearing them around the house at her place, and suddenly she said, oh no, my toe's sticking out. So I think they definitely fit. It's not that they're too small or too short rather. I think I just didn't cinch the toe properly because I did a star toe, which was from the pattern Skedaddle by Lena Gerald of A Wee Bit Nitty. Free pattern on Ravelry. And you can see the decreases. So you sort of decrease going around instead of just on the sides as you would with a standard toe. And then at the very end with, I think, we'll say 12 stitches left, I don't remember what it is, you just run the yarn through with a needle and pull it up together, which is why it comes into that little point. And I don't think I cinched them or sewed it in properly, because you may recall the same thing happened with the socks I made for my nephew. So clearly something wasn't working, and I don't know what. But anyway, I've got to fix those for her. But other than that, they're very good. Exactly matching. Oh no, actually not quite exactly. There you go. You can see there's a little bit more yellow coming down on that one, but other than that, pretty much matching, which I was quite happy with. Last finished object, another pair of socks. As I said, there were two, but these are some more tube socks, so no heel on these. These are for my nephew, the same nephew who got the rainbow striped socks. So these are for his birthday, which is next week. This is also Felici. I'm using a lot of Felici since January, actually. I think this is my third or fourth pair of Felici socks. And it's really good because it's great for gifts, the Felici yarn, because it's really soft, but because it's quite sturdy as well, and it's commercially dyed, so they're easy to care for. So I find they make really good, it makes really good yarn for presents. So this colorway is Time Traveller, and if you're a Doctor Who fan, or you know the reference, one of the previous Doctor Who's had a scarf that was in this color. So while I like Matt Smith Doctor Who, wasn't a huge fan of this Doctor Who, I like the reference. And these were going to be for me, but then as I was knitting them, I realised that I should probably do some socks for my nephew, and B, then thought he would probably like these colours. He loves yellow, and he likes, I think the brownie colours would go well for him as well. So I have done ribbing for all 6 of the colours. I think I'd already done that before I decided I was going to give them to him. I think if I had realised or decided earlier, I probably would have only done 3 or so, because then I wouldn't have had to make them as long, but that's okay. On the top here, I've done the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern, and that is because A, I like the look of it, and B, I knitted these and will be entering them in for the Inside Number 23 Harry Potter knit along, which is being hosted by the lovely Katie of Inside Number 23. And that was my entry. I do have 2. So that's them there. I love how the Hermione's pattern looks on soft striping yarn. I think it's one of those patterns that looks good on any yarn, and it looks so different on various yarns. So if you haven't tried it and you're interested, I would definitely recommend a Hermione's Everyday pattern on a self-striping. So on the back, I haven't done the pattern, obviously, for walking on. And I did do a star toe on these, but then instead of cinching the end, I actually did a Kitchener, because I didn't want the resulting possible popping out. And I think I maybe was 1 row different, because I have a little bit more, I think 1 more row's worth of yellow on that toe than this one, which kind of bothers me, but really not. I think if it had worked out exactly even, I would have been happy. This way I'm just like, whatever. I don't think Liam, my nephew, is going to mind very much at all. So yes, very happy with these. Another cowl that I can enter these into is the Stripy Socks cowl, which is being run by Candace at Pin Feather and Pearls. So definitely go and enter that. It's running for 6 weeks, so I think it will still be going into April. But in any case, you've got a couple of weeks left of March. So if you have some stripy socks on the go that were cast on in March, you'll be able to enter those there. So double dipping, and I'm going to triple dip into the Fairy Little Twist and Stitch double dip knit along. If you go along and check out the thread there, you can post anything for any other knit along, as long as you post in that double dip thread during the period of the other knit along, and you have to follow all the rules of that knit along to enter. And they're going to have some draws, so that's an extra fun way to just have a look at what everyone's working on, to, I guess, vicariously participate in other knit alongs, and fun times, and possibly win some more prizes. And I have got half another pair of socks to show you. And that is another pair of Hermione socks in another lot of Felicia yarn. This one though is for me. I think this is my 5th pair of socks for the year, or 4.5 really, because I finished a pair for charity where I'd knit one in 2015 and finished the second one in 2016. But other than that, 4th pair of socks, but the first pair for me. So I'm very pleased to be having some for myself, and I'm very excited to have the lovely Hermione's. So this is Felicia as well. This is in the teacup colour, and I have used that colourway before to make some little arm warmers for a gift for Christmas last year. But I think it's really fun because it's got that lovely pop of red that I like, but it looks great with the other colours. Now, can you see here, this, what from a distance could look like one big wide stripe, is one of those weird stripy things. Looks better, a bit more different there. You can see there is the line of the different colours. So I'm not sure why with some Felicia yarns there is 2 such similar colours put right next to each other, because it's very hard to differentiate, but never mind, it's not that big a deal. That's the back view. I did a fish lips kiss heel, and as you can see I did white for the ribbing, the heel and the toe. So I did do a star toe again, and I did cinch it up. I think I might have made a better knot this time, so we shall see, because my fear is that I'll be wearing these in a shoe and it will unravel while I'm wearing them, and then the whole thing will unravel down. But let's not put that thought to the universe. Let's put out positive thoughts that it will stay. I have these in my Alice in Wonderland bag, which is from Little Skein in the Big Wool. And I'm sure there is a label from Little Skein on here somewhere, but maybe there's not. But there is this lovely ring that says happiness, which is lovely. I thought, as well as the colours matching well, having a teacup with teacups on the bag and the Mad Hatter's Tea Party was quite a good match. So I haven't cast on the second one of this. I only actually just cinched the toe this morning. I finished knitting it last night while we were watching a movie at home. And again, loving the Hermione's pattern on the stripes and loving having a sock for me. Acquisitions. I was very lucky to win a contest that was being run by Mary of the Kino Knits podcast, and she, the designer of Kino Knits. She had a competition where you could win all of her patterns, so I then woke up to 7 messages on Ravelry, and I had all 7 of her patterns, so I cannot wait to get started on some of those. Kino Knits podcast comes to you from Kenya, which is where Mary is based. She's originally from America. And her latest pattern is the marabou, which is a type of stork type bird. And the pattern starts in ribbing and then goes out, and it's like feathers, and it's really beautiful. So check that out if you haven't already seen it, and you'll see it on my needles sometime soon. I was also very kindly sent a lovely new pattern by the designer herself, Sarah, who is Mrs. Shu, and she has the Cultivate and Create audio podcast, formerly of Inner Snit as well. And that pattern is called A Choice Bit of Calico, and it's echoing some sort of 1920s type of era designs, and it's got beautiful beadwork, and it's just lovely. And the design name, A Choice Bit of Calico, is from a slang term for a very attractive woman. So it sounds like it might be a Cockney slang term. So here's me doing a very bad Cockney accent. Apologies to anyone who actually has this accent and I'm butchering it, but she's a choice bit of calico, eh? Anyway, so the pattern is much better than my attempt at that accent, so thank you very much, Sarah. Another pattern I came to get was one I purchased myself. Jill, who is No Dice and one half of the Skein and Navel podcast, along with Michelle. Jill mentioned a pattern that was on sale for 50% off, and it was called the Wonder Warmer, and it's a knitted headband, but the top has a little peak, and it's like Wonder Woman's headband. Very cool. So I'm going to definitely be making that very soon. In the post, I got a very lovely surprise from the wonderful Amber of the Yarn Junkie podcast. Wonderful podcast, definitely go and check it out. She sent me this beautiful card, and I love this rooster. He's wearing a little bib, a neckerchief, and I like to wear neckerchiefs or wear my shawls that way, so it's very cute. And with the card was this gorgeous little stitch marker. It's a yarn ball. or as progress keeper, I beg your pardon. I've been using this on my sock projects, particularly the ones where I was doing the Hermione's pattern. Obviously, after a while, you can see which side is your pattern side, but when you're first starting off especially, it's good to have a little marker, so I've been using that one. So thank you very much, Amber. I also had a lovely in-person present from Becky, who is Westerly Whimsy or Westerly Whimsies. I can't remember if that, one of them is Ravelry, one's Instagram. I can't remember which one is which. But Becky is the host of the Wrapped in Wool audio podcast. And Becky is originally from Perth, but currently lives in Virginia in the USA. But she's here in Australia at the moment, and I was so excited to catch up with her today. Her and her little boy, who is so cute. We all met for coffee and cake this morning, and that was so wonderful to meet Becky in person. Hi, Becky. And Becky gave me this yarn. I opened it. I said, how did you know what colour to get? It's very exciting. So it's Diabolical, which is a dye I've never used before. And it's called Off With Her Red. Very punny. But what's especially exciting, it's Targi wool. So it's 90% superwash Targi and 10% nylon. And I've never knit with Targi before. And I've never had Targi sock yarn either. I think I have some other Targi in my stash. I think it's in a worsted weight that I think I got from Blue Moon Fibre Arts, but I have never knit it. But this is going to be great, so I can't wait to cast that on. It's self-striping, it's black and red, and feels really nice, and it's soft but not soft like a merino, so it's got a little bit more of a toothiness but not in a rough way, so I think that's going to wear very nicely for socks. So I'm very much looking forward to casting that on. And the last thing I've got is from the library, so it's not something I'm going to keep, but I might end up buying my own copy. So it's Susan B. Anderson's latest book, Kids Knitting Workshop. So I've been teaching my niece and nephew how to knit, more specifically my niece, my little nephew Liam, who's coming up on 6. It's his 6th birthday that he's getting his these stripy socks for. He always asks me, he wants to do, have I brought his knitting? He wants to do his knitting, but he hasn't quite got the hang of how to do it. So when we get it out, he loses interest very quickly. So I'm hoping that I'll learn some good techniques in here of a good way to try and engage him. Emma is very good, that's my niece. She's very good at knitting now, and she's pretty much got the muscle memory, but she's not very good at the first stitch on a row, so she often would get me to do it. But I've heard a couple of reviews of this book on some other podcasts, and I'm sorry, it's well, one of them actually, I was going to say it's left my mind which podcast they were on, but one of them was Curious Handmade with lovely Helen, who's also from Australia but now living in London, because she actually interviewed Susan on a recent episode, and they talked about this book. So one of the things that Susan talks about is getting children to learn how to knit in the round. And that is something that I had given some thought to, because it's that first stitch that Emma struggled with. I thought if I can just cast on and then she can just knit, do the knit stitch round and round and round, that would probably get her more in the hang of it and get her learning how to do those stitches without worrying about that first stitch and then the needles popping out and all that sort of thing. So I've bought her own set of needles. I believe I got a 40 centimetre, which inches, I'm trying to do maths. We'll say 15 inch? No, that can't be right. Oh goodness. Do the maths yourself. 12 inch, something like that. 12 inch cable. I think I got maybe 3.5 millimetre or 4 millimetre. And I thought I'll have a look through this book and see if there's any specific projects that would suit her. But also she could just make a cowl. If we cast that on and then it's just, we don't have garter stitch or anything like that. So just, the ends roll, and then she could just have that around her neck, be stretchy enough. So that's one idea. And then I'll also have a look through to see if there's anything Liam would like. So once I've had a better look through the book, I'll let you know more about what I think of it. I think it's going to be brilliant. I can't imagine that there'd be any problems with it. I don't know if you can hear that squeaking, but that's what it is. I'm not trying to be annoying, so sorry if that was. I was just trying to explain what it was, if you could hear that weird noise while I was talking. So yes, very fun book. I'm very excited that my library had it. And as I said, if I really like it and feel it's something that I want to use regularly, I'll definitely be getting myself another copy to keep. Okay, so we're going to sign off for this episode. I will be putting another episode up very soon that will have all my works in progress, talk about our cowls, and talk about some of the things I've been doing in Spin Me Right Round. But before that, I have a little entry into hashtag sillysinggang. So if you've watched Socksetera with the lovely Shannon, she has started this hashtag. It's on Instagram and some podcasts, and it involves headphones and singing. So Shannon herself has done a Sinead O'Connor, which, you know, would work quite well with my hair, but that one's been taken, so I won't be doing Sinead. Katie from Inside Number 23 did the famous Frozen song. Vicky, the lovely Devixter from Sweet Leaps, did a fantastic version of Ariel, where she was holding up knitting items instead of things that Ariel has in The Little Mermaid. Charlotte from Charlotte and Gus did a great Like a Virgin. Like a Version is a thing on a radio station here where a band comes in and does a cover of another song but puts a really different twist on it. So instead of saying Like a Virgin, I usually default to saying Like a Version. Side note there. As I said, it's also a hashtag on Instagram, and the lovely Marsha Fairy Little, who's the designer of the Narrator Express, she did a great song of the happy song from the Brady Bunch, which is good, and I think there's been several others. And today, it's my turn. Now, I did have a hard time thinking about which song I'd like to do. I thought back to the 80s and 90s, and then I was listening, or could hear, some music that Sophie the Teen had playing, and she had some Evanescence on. So that's what I've decided to go with today. We have Evanescence, Bring Me to Life. So here we go. How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my core, where I've become so numb, without a soul, my spirit sleeping somewhere cold, until you find it there and lead it back home. Wake me up inside, wake me up inside, call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to run before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become. And on that kind of emo note, bye, happy crafting.